Those are good. Yep. So there's a salamander right here in the water. I'll see if I can grab him. So this is a adult, so he's got back legs. Let him settle. So he's got fully formed back legs. So that's an adult. If you find a baby salamander, they'll have gills, exterior gills on the front, and they won't have those back legs, except for certain species where the adults keep the exterior gills. We'll put him back in the water and put his little hiding spot back so he can get under it, but he's just chilling out right there. Hey, welcome back to Keep Your Talks with Kiki. I'm here today to talk about some cool stuff. I'm very excited for this episode. Hopefully it comes together really well. Basically, I'm going to be talking about crayfish a lot. I'm going to talk about salamanders a lot. I'm going to include a clip of me finding and showing you a little salamander in a stream, which was from a couple days ago, which is really cool. And so I'm going to go ahead and start answering your questions about salamanders before I show you that. So somebody asked what my favorite salamander is. My favorite salamanders are the tiger salamanders, and that's because we have one at Zoo Atlanta that I actually work with, and he's super cute. His name's Tony the Tiger, and he's an ambassador animal, and he's just really cute, and he's pretty big. He's about this long, and so yeah, he's my favorite. They're really cute because they have big eyes and they have this really wide mouth that makes it look like they're always smiling, which is really cute. Something that makes them really special also answers a different question that somebody had. They asked, how do they breathe? So something that makes salamanders really special is that they breathe differently depending on what species. So there's a group of salamanders called sirens, and they have external gills their whole life, and they breathe with those gills. There are other types of salamanders that have those gills as young, and then the gills go away and they develop internal lungs that they breathe through. And then there are other salamanders that don't have lungs inside at all. They breathe through their skin and thin membranes that are in their mouth and throat, and that's how they're breathing, which is so cool that they have all these different ways that they can breathe depending on how they're adapted for their environment. Something they do that's beneficial in creek ecosystems is eating pest species. So we all hate mosquitoes, and mosquitoes get eaten a ton by salamanders. They're going to be in there eating them up. And then another thing is that since they breathe through their skin, typically they have very sensitive permeable skin. So if the water in a creek ecosystem gets polluted, it's got toxins in it or anything like that, then the salamanders are actually the first animals to abandon that ecosystem because they can't live there, or they're the first animals to die off in that ecosystem because their skin is so sensitive. So because of that, scientists actually use them as a quote-unquote indicator species, which means that when you go into an ecosystem and you knew there were salamanders and now you don't see any, you may not have at first been able to tell that something bad was going on with the environment, but now you know that something is because that species is gone and you know they're sensitive to toxins. So that gives you kind of a basis to figure out, okay, I may not be seeing everything here, obviously. Some of them do camouflage. Some of them you'll see they're one color banded back and forth across, and that's to blend in with rippling of water. Some of them are colored to blend in with rocks, but some of them are actually really brightly colored, like there are red salamanders, yellow salamanders, blue salamanders, and those salamanders are colored as a warning. So they are most likely toxic if eaten, or poisonous. So their bright coloration, they don't want to camouflage. It's okay if a predator comes down because it's going to see a bright red salamander, and the predator knows that that means that that animal is most likely poisonous, and so they don't want to eat it. So they're either camouflaging or they're trying to stand out as like a you can't touch this kind of warning. A really, really cool fact about these guys is that there's more biodiversity in salamanders in North America than anywhere in the world, and actually half of the species found in the United States are all within the Appalachian Mountains, which is insane. We have so much biodiversity within our salamander species in the Appalachian Mountains that Many universities throughout the area actually focus on salamander ecology for their biology programs because we have so many species to study here, which is really cool. Their slimy bodies can be a defense mechanism, so a little harder to get a hold of. For most of them, it is a protective layer because they live by water, so they're constantly kept moist. It's an adaptation to their environment, so they're just slimy because they're in a wet environment and it's good for their skin. But there are some salamander species who secrete extra slime to make themselves more slimy to get away from a predator. They're found in North and Central America, parts of South America, all throughout Europe, through parts of Asia, and throughout Africa. So they're pretty much all over the place. And then a fun fact about them is that baby salamanders and baby tadpoles actually can look kind of similar. Baby salamanders are a little bit longer, but both are born with no back legs. Now, a baby salamander will have gills on the side of its head that poke out, and that's how it breathes because it doesn't have lungs yet. So whereas a frog doesn't have those gills, it's just going to grow its legs and stop being a tadpole. A salamander will actually most of the time lose its gills and grow back legs before becoming an adult salamander. Okay, so now we're going to move on to crayfish. Some of you are like, I've always called them crawdads, or I've always called them crawfish. What are you talking about? All are correct. The more scientific name is crayfish. That's more like widely accepted, but they're also known as freshwater lobster, mudbugs, and yabbies. So all are accepted here. We don't discriminate. They can get pretty big depending on species. So the largest species is the Tasmanian giant freshwater crayfish, and it can get like 30 inches long and weigh 6 pounds. They get huge. Normally, most crawfish species are around 4 to 5 inches long. They're omnivores, so they're going to eat fish. They might eat other crayfish. They're going to eat fruits, and they're going to, maybe not fruits, if they can find a fruit by the stream, and mainly veggies and aquatic plants. So that's what they're going to eat because they're omnivores. They're not technically just small lobsters. They are very closely related to lobsters, but they're a different kind of animal, but they are closely related. So they're not just baby lobsters, but they are very closely related to lobsters. And then let's see, there are some invasive aquatic species in Georgia. One of the main ones actually close to where I am at are the Asian clams. They're found throughout the Chattahoochee River. Asian clams are not a native species. They were discovered here in 1924, and they have grown exponentially, and now they are found in 38 states in the United States and Washington, D.C. So they have taken over, and how they have done that is this species of clam can actually self-fertilize. So it produces eggs and it produces sperm, and it can produce something like 2,000 eggs in one season. So the other clams that can't reproduce that fast are native species of clams. It's kind of hard to compete with this clam that's just breeding like crazy all by itself. So that's caused some issues where it's actually beating out in competition the other clams. There's just so many more of these Asian clams than the other clams. There are multiple other invasive species. There's plant species, aquatic plant species, animal species all over the place. Lots of invasive species throughout every state. There are a lot of natural estuaries in Georgia. I couldn't find an exact number, but I did find out that they are protected by the National Estuarine Research Reserve System, and they work to protect the Georgia estuaries, which is really good, or not just Georgia estuaries, but all of them. Some fun facts about hellbenders, okay? These guys are a really cool kind of salamander. They are found from New York all the way to Alabama. They are big. They can get 2 feet long, and they can weigh like 4 pounds. They're big salamanders, and they're a natural species. There are 2 different species found in that region area. They can live 25 to 30 years. They mature very slowly, and 90% of their diet is crayfish. R.I.P. Okay, so that's everything for that. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Keeper Talks with Kiki, and I'll catch you next time.